Welcome to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. If you're a chief executive, or if you think like one, and you want to create exponentially greater impact, then this show is for you. My name is Richard Medcalf, founder of X Quadrant. I coach some of the most successful and impressive CEOs and executive teams on the planet and help them achieve extraordinary results. And no matter how successful you've been in the past, there's always a whole new level of impact available to you. So, if you're ready to play a bigger game than ever before, I invite you to join us and become an Impact Multiplier CEO.
Welcome back to the Impact Multiplier CEO podcast. I'm Davina Stanley, and as usual, I'm here with Richard Medcalf to continue our season on questions that multiply your impact. Look, these have been really terrific questions, and Richard's been holding back on the question for today. It's a fantastic one, I think. I'm really excited to get into it. How are you, Richard?
I'm well, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into this question, which, as you say, is a bit of a mystery title. It sounds actually more like some oil that you might put in your car or something, I think. Or something else, but let's do it, shall we? The question is Wwxd. Wwxd. So that's self-explanatory, isn't it? Shall we finish there?
What on earth, Richard? What on earth is Wwxd?
Well, let me explain. There is a saying, I suppose, or a phrase, right? WWJD. Which some Christians use, and they have little bracelets or whatever with it on, or T-shirts with it on, which is, what would Jesus do? And for Christians, it's just a way of getting outside themselves and thinking, well, rather than having to go and consult their priest or try to go and study the Bible or something in an instant where they might need to make a decision, they would kind of ask themselves, well, what would Jesus do? And it would kind of give them perhaps a quick read on, well, what would be a loving thing to do in this situation, for example, or whatever. So WWJD is this kind of way of getting out of yourself and thinking, what would Jesus do? And so I think that's a great question. As you know, I'm a Christian, so I find that is a helpful question for me. But WWXD kind of just expands this concept, and anyone can really apply it. And the kind of key, I'll get into what does it mean, the X, but the key point here is that you don't get what you want, you get who you are. And you don't get what you want, you get who you are. This is, if you like, the secret sauce of my work with leaders. Often leaders will come with a tactical issue or even a strategic issue about my team aren't functioning, or how do I align my business, or how do I create alignment and cohesion, or I'm just overwhelmed, or whatever it is, right? Or I've got somebody on my team who needs to kind of turn around, or I've got somebody new in a role who wants to kind of really accelerate. How do I do? What can we do? And so we kind of start with very often with these kind of questions. And we get into that and we start to work on that, and we look at their stakeholder environment, and we look at their key behaviors and what the stretch is going to be for them and everything else. But at a more fundamental level, the deeper change is going to come through this question of, who do you want to be? What's on your to-be list? So let me give you an example. Imagine you're in sales. It's always the easy example, sales, right? Because it's so clear what salespeople do. So you're in sales, and you might say, what's your to-do list, right? We say, well, I've got to make 10 sales calls today. I'm going to have to send some proposals. We're going to follow up with some clients. I'm going to visit a prospect, whatever. I'm trying to do a renewal. So you can kind of come up with an action plan, and that's the one level of operating. But if we go below that to the to-be list, well, who do you want to be as that sales manager? And you probably start to come up with words like, well, if I come to work and I'm enthusiastic, I'm curious, I'm rested, I'm coming with a bit of a servant heart, I'm coming with a desire to serve my clients rather than just to kind of screw money out of them. if I'm feeling healthy, perhaps if I'm in a listening mode, then if I come as that person, then almost the sales will naturally follow, because I'm going to be, all those other to-dos are going to be so much better when I'm enthusiastic, curious, rested, and servant-hearted, and listening and healthy. And so the to-be list is actually vastly more important than the to-do list. Because, yeah, actually, even if we show up, even if we make fewer calls, but we show up as this different person, we're probably going to get better results than if we just plow through.
So true. So true. And I love the list of adjectives that you've got there too. You know, enthusiastic, curious, rested. How rare is that, and how hard is it to maintain as well?
Yeah, and it's hard. You know, it's hard for it's always a reset we have to do for ourselves, right? I have to do it as well, right? Got back from my holiday 3 weeks away in the summer. The first couple of weeks were hard, actually. I was getting back into it. People were still away. It was taking a while to get going. And I realized, you know, how am I showing up in those few days? It's important, right, to work on the inner game.
Yes, yes. And not to get perhaps a little begrudging, or things aren't quite the way that we want them to be sometimes, and to have that, you know, as you put it, servant-hearted approach to things, where we're putting other people first, and of course being healthy. I think that's terrific. And
but just to step back, those are not necessarily the words that you need. The point is that as you start to think about this whole question of who do I want to be, then you might come up with other adjectives, but it's really saying, well, what is that foundation that I want to be building all my activity on? And what I'd like to say is, what's the stretch in that for you? So what's the stretch? And the reason for asking this is it's really important to get clear and to write it down, because we all have a default future, a default setting of behaviors. And then there's a stretch, which is where we need to put our attention and be intentional. There was a dinner party hosted by a famous businessman, and he invited a whole load of people, the great and the good, if you like, to this restaurant. And the wine was flowing and everything else, and people were talking. And he just stopped and said, before we go any further, I just want to say, there's only one rule: don't be negative. Any negative, you got to put money in, like $50 or something, in the pot in the middle. Yeah, and no bitching, no complaining about people, whatever. Let's just all keep it positive. And everyone was like, that's fine. You know, we're all kind of future focused, you know, people, positive people. That's going to be easy for us, right? So why not? Within about 10 minutes, there was hundreds and hundreds of dollars in the middle of the table. and everybody had put stuff in, probably multiple times, apart from one guy. And it was really interesting, because it was like, well, these were intelligent people, successful people. They'd just been told very clearly what was expected. There was an immediate consequence for breaking the rule, and you're getting immediate visual feedback as other people broke the rules and were having to put money in. And yet everybody kept doing it. Just because the wine was flowing, people were chattering and bantering, and it's easy just to let a bit of cynicism or sarcasm or whatever come out, or, you know, make fun of other people, whatever. So this was what was happening. And they turned to this one person who hadn't put any money in. They said, how are you doing it? He said, it was simple, really. When you said what the rule was, I picked up my placemat, which had whatever his name on it, I guess. So I turned it round and I just wrote on the back of it, no negativity, exclamation mark, and put it down in front of my wine glass. And so every time I picked up my wine, my drink, whatever I had, you know, there it is, no negativity. So I had this constant visual reminder of who I wanted to be in this moment. And we don't think we need it. We think that's a crutch. We think that's something, you know, for beginners. But no, we always need that reminder. That's why often at the start of a meeting, I'll say to people, yeah, who do you want to be in this moment, in this meeting? Write down 3 adjectives. How are you showing up in the next hour on this call or in this meeting? It just gets people to stop and put that metaphorical placemat in front of them for a minute.
So simple. These things are often not rocket science, are they? It's just something simple that you do, and make important by actually taking a small step, isn't it?
Exactly.
Mm.
And so let me bring you to the issue about Wwxd, because I haven't even explained what that is really yet. So so the X really represents what I call super leader. So so you can put whoever, you might have a name, you might have somebody that comes to mind when you think of who would be, who's an incredible leader, or it might even just be this mythical figure of super leader that you come up with in your mind. And so the question I like to ask people is, imagine that somebody came in and started to do your job. Let's imagine you left, somebody else came in, they took your role, and they nailed it. Right? Everyone was like amazed at what they were doing. They'd achieved all these goals, they got promoted, whatever it is, right? They really had an amazing 18 months, say, as they came into this role. What was that person doing? How were they showing up? What was their list of adjectives? What were their behaviors? What were their habits? And so when you can put a name to that person, and so you can just call it super leader or something, or but you might say, oh, actually, that the ideal person for the role I'm in, I could just imagine, I don't know, my ex-boss doing it, or I could imagine, Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, or I don't know, whoever it is that just comes to mind as the person that would be an amazing fit for this role. You just insert them into that phrase, and you say, well, what would they do? What would they do right now? And what it does is, to be honest, it's not really them, right? It's still you, right? That's the secret, right? It's still you doing the thinking. But it gets you out of your own frame of reference a bit. It gets you to step out of the situation and think about, well, if it wasn't me, what would I do? What would that person do? And then that helps us get a new perspective on who we might need to be and what we might need to do in that moment.
I love that. I love that I learned so much from you during these sessions too. But just picturing, I've got a person in mind, and already thinking about that. That's a fantastic, again, simple but quirky and really powerful strategy. I love that. I'm going to reflect on that. That's really, really useful.
Well, let me just put let me push you a bit harder on that. So, like in your business at the moment, what would super leader do if super leader came in to Clarity First right now? You went on a nice long vacation and you came back, and they would absolutely transform the business in many ways, and you could be happier. Yeah. What would they have been doing? What comes to mind? Hello, it's Richard here with a quick interlude. These conversations are all about upgrading how you think about creating impact. So here's a resource to help you do just that whilst staying fast and focused. The CEO's checklist for challenging times is a quick way to enhance your thinking and detect blind spots even when things are moving incredibly fast and you're not sure what's going to happen next. You can get this powerful checklist of 17 world-class strategies by heading to xquadrant.com/go/challenging times checklist with a hyphen between each of those three last words. Now, back to the conversation.
Well, I like to think that super leader's in the middle of this particular thing right now, but it's certainly on top of my mind. And that's really crystallizing the vision for where we're going. We're at a big point in change in our business. And so that's something that, golly, if super leader could nail that for me, I would just think that's incredible. Really honing our value proposition and who we're working with and who we're helping. I think that's the key thing at the moment that's top of mind for me. I don't know if that's quite the answer you're looking for. It's not an operational or doing the job thing. That's really very much a big picture planning piece, which is just the key thing that I'm certainly really excited about.
Yeah, so I suppose I'll push it because I guess that's something you're thinking about already. So I kind of think about, well, what would they be doing differently about that planning? You know what I mean? So what
doing it better than I am.
Yeah, but in what way would they be doing that visioning? Would they be being very analytical about it? Would they be talking to lots of ex-customers and stopping navel gazing? Would they do a quick and dirty and not wait for perfection? What would they do?
I like to think super leader would have more history to draw on. I don't know if that's fair at setting visions. and being proactive, so they perhaps would be faster at it. I'd like to think that they would intuitively know the top things to focus on to make it really work. Whereas for me, I feel like I'm being thorough and going at it deeply because it's the first time I've taken such a deep take on it. I like to think that they would have experience enough to know what are the top 3 things to focus on in that process.
Oh, hang on a second.
Really
So, but you're breaking the rule. This is great because you're breaking the rule. This is not what would this. It's not Wwxd. What would so and so CV look like, right? It's not their resume. It's not like what experience did they need to have for this role, right?
Okay.
It's what would they do, right? What would they be doing? How would what would they do differently tomorrow or next week compared with what you're doing next week, right?
Well, they'd be more consistent with, they would batch a good amount of time in a block away rather than fitting it in amongst other things.
Right.
They would also, I think, in terms of the visioning work, honestly, I don't know what else they would do in relation to this. I just know they'd probably do it better than I would. But I don't.
I think you might. Okay, well, you might want to think about it. I mean, let's not do the whole. Let's spend the whole. Make it into an hour coaching session. But I would think about this. I would think about it because perhaps it's as simple as they would block out a whole day and they'd probably go off out. They're doing away day and they would really work on this. And that could be a thing that you want to take and say that's what super leader would do. They'd actually go away for a day, no distractions, and do it. It might be that to really make a progress.
There we are. So, Richard, is there anything else you want to tell us about this super leader? Should I let me put you in that position?
I thought you were going to miss it.
Oh, no. I know we've had a holiday, but Richard,
come on.
You know what super leader is. You had time to think about this.
I know, but I told you I never think about it before to get on because otherwise it's going to
not fair, is it?
It's not going to be fair.
Super leader comes into your role. Do you have a name for super leader? Just a first name for super leader?
No, I just tend to. Well, actually, I have. I actually have another name, which is the $1 Million Coach, and I just kind of have it. I just basically kind of often will say to myself, what would like the $1 Million Coach do? And that's to say, it's not a goal or a kind of ambition, but it's just saying if somebody was paying me $1 million to work, to transform them and their business over the course of a year, to totally, if that was what people were paying me, how would I show up? What would I be doing tomorrow, right? How would I change my day? What would I be doing X and Y, right? So, I suspect that, so one thing that I'm aware one project I have is writing a book, and that's something which I'm, as is typical when it comes to writing a book, procrastinating a bit on. I'm advancing things, but I think I would have a bit more of a disciplined writing schedule.
The $1 Million Coach is a bit more disciplined.
I think $1 Million Coach would probably have, it would probably carve out more time for that longer range stuff. I think I can be quite easily get back into the kind of more tactical, who am I going to call up today kind of thing, which is important.
I'm interested that you've stepped away from humanizing your ex. So $1 Million Coach is a concept, isn't it, rather than a person? So I'll put it out there. The name for me is Michael.
Okay.
What would Michael do? So I can picture Michael.
Yeah.
I've got to think very carefully what I think Michael would do in my current situation, which on the fly I perhaps haven't done a very good job of yet. It's a good one.
Well, okay, so it's a good point. So I suppose I amalgamate a couple of people into that $1 Million Coach. So I can't think of two people, and sometimes I will substitute one of their names into that. Because they've got slightly different businesses, they're slightly different approaches. So I have in the past. I would, sometimes I will think about what would that, think about that one person. What would they do? I do that definitely. But I also have this kind of slightly more, conceptual version. But it's still quite clear in my mind what this kind of person, is like, right? Because
Bill Campbell, it sounds like you're channeling. I think
there you go. It could be, it could be Bill Campbell. It could be
billion-dollar coach.
yes, yes. Well, yeah, it's slightly different. My billion Campbell, he didn't charge people $1 billion.
No, he did not.
But
he achieved that, or helped them achieve that.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
No, I think that's a fabulous concept. So I like that. So you've got 3 ways of looking at that in a sense then, haven't you? You've got the conceptual idea of the $1 million coach, and then you've got 2 particular people that you've blended perhaps into a singular avatar, if you like, of your character. And is it that with those 2 characters you're picking a situation and thinking, oh, Fred's really strong in this area, so I want to pick the best of Fred, let's say, in this particular area, and then in another area recognizing that Mary might be stronger in this area, so you're emulating Mary in that area. Is that how you're splitting the 2?
Probably. I think, or it can even be a bit of a panel, right? Sometimes you can kind of think, well, would they both be doing the same thing, or would they be doing different things? Again, it's the idea is opening up options, right? It's getting you out your own one track of what I need to do today, and think, well, what would somebody else do today? And what would super leader do? And often when I do it with customers, they'll often say, oh, they would be spending less time on these operational tasks, and they'd be talking to the stakeholders more, they'd be getting out and meeting people, they'd be strategizing, and they'd be communicating more on vision or whatever it is, right? But it helps them kind of go, oh yeah, actually I can do that. Why don't I do that?
Yes.
And new possibilities emerge.
No, I love that. And in my head, I'm picturing the debate between I'm just calling them Fred and Mary, your 2 characters, you sitting there having a debate between the 2 of them about how to handle a particular thing. But that's perhaps me playing head games with myself. I think that's a really, really clever idea. So is there anything else you wanted to add to wrap that particular session up, or that concept up, to tie it together?
No, I think we've kind of come to the end of the series. So I can give a couple of thoughts at the very end, but why don't we kind of wrap up the series, and we can look forward to the next one.
Perhaps a really good point, just to remind everybody of what the topics are of this, or the questions that Richard's asked us all during this season. In case some of you've missed 1 or 2 of them, you may like to go back. I think it's been a particularly interesting series, actually. So I'll just run through those 9 questions quickly, and then I'll let Richard recap. But the first one is, what do you stand for? And I remember, Richard, you asking me what I stood for, which really put me on the spot, as did the next one, which was, what's your 25-year vision? So 2 really great sort of bigger picture questions. And then we've got some others sitting under there. What's the single biggest contribution you can make? What's an 8 or less, which is a lovely one to help you think about what really is a 9 or a 10. Question 5, how can we make friends with volatility? 6, where are we playing it safe? Where are we dithering? 7, where's the dissonance, and who's speaking the unwelcome truth? I think that's, again, a really uncomfortable one sometimes, but important. Number 8, what kind of leaders are you growing? And also this last one, Wwxd, what would your super leader do? So, Richard, what a great series. Any final thoughts to wrap it up?
I guess final thought is really what I started with today, which is, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. This is the harder transformation. We often think about the tips and the tricks on the task activity, on the task level, but underneath that, there's behaviors and habits, and underneath that, there's kind of insights and assumptions and beliefs, and we need to work on all of those 3 levels when you want to multiply your impact. And that's what I do, right, with CEOs, with other members of their C-suite, and with other kind of ambitious, purposeful leaders. And so I guess it's probably worth just taking 30 seconds to say, if this is you, if you're somebody who is ready to up-level your impact, who's ready to have somebody who can see perhaps what you can't see, and who can say what other people are not daring to say to you, then get in touch. Go to the website. You can go to xquadrant.com/speak is the quickest way. But get in touch. Let's have a conversation. This is what I do. And I'm always interested in meeting people who are going places and are trying to make a difference. And so let's start a conversation.
Sounds wonderful. Sounds really great. So as ever, you can get the details of all of the episodes, including the 9 there that I just mentioned that from this series at xquadrant.com/podcast. So thanks so much for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.
Goodbye. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Now let's talk about you. When you're in top leadership, when you're in the biggest role of your career, who supports you at a deep level as you lead others? Who helps you multiply your impact and get to the next level? If you're ready to learn more about our content, our coaching, and our community, then visit us at xquadrant.com.